3, 2, 1. Hi, I'm Angie.
And I'm Jamie.
Mental health is important.
And sometimes even the best therapists lose their shit.
Like the shit show. That
The
is...
shrink show. You pronounced it wrong. Tune on in and listen to Angie's shrink show of a life, because I'm perfect.
Listen to our podcast, okay? You'll like it with therapists.
Coping skills. Shh.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for being here. We have a wonderful guest today. First, I want to thank you all for your wonderful likes, shares, and subscribes. We could not do this without you. We are getting closer and closer to our $1 billion, so it's on you.
I can feel it.
Yep.
It's happening.
It's happening. But today I want to introduce you to our wonderful guest, Donna Wolff. I had the pleasure of meeting Donna back in April, and it was so serendipitous. Is that the right word? Or synchronistic. It might be a better word. It was very synchronistic that I had met her. It was literally just on the heels of a student of mine attempting to take their life, which was the first time of that happening in the 7 years that I've worked there. I had met her earlier in the day. My student attempted that night. The next day at the conference, saw her again, and was like, I need you to come to my school, talk to my students. She was like, when, where, and boom, like 5 days later, she was driving the 2-hour drive. Is it 2 hours, Donna?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, the 2-hour drive to my school to talk to my students. And her story was so impactful, not only for my students, but also for the staff. And I just was incredibly grateful for her message and just the passion and the vulnerability with which she shares it. So I, Donna, want to open the stage to you. I just am so honored that you are here today to share your story, and I can't wait for people to hear it.
Well, awesome. Thank you again, Miss Angie, for the invite. And we are kind of kindred spirits, that the more we share our stories, the more we give everybody else permission to talk about mental health and to let everybody know it's okay not to be okay.
Amen.
So yeah, so we are in June, but May was National Mental Health Awareness Month. Just to start off, everybody should know that the new 988 number is alive and well and up and running. So if anybody is in mental health crisis, please do not hesitate to reach out to 988. Everyone knows 911 when you're in a physical crisis. Oh my gosh, I broke my leg. I need some help. I got to call somebody. If you have an open wound going on inside the brain and you need some help, you call 988. The National Suicide Hotline number is still available at 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-TALK. Again, they have veterans and Spanish, all of that you can click on. And of course, the texting hotline number, you can text any word to 741-741, 24/7 texting, chat line, all kinds of help available there also.
Thank you so much.
I want to start off with resources, always do, because again, never know who's out in the audience that might need some help right now.
Well, and not only that, but I like to tell people, I've had multiple clients use the text line and the new 988 number, and they have had wonderful experiences. And it was really, whoever is responding and answering to them is really doing a wonderful job. So don't hesitate, because firsthand experiences, they're great.
They're very highly trained. You can talk or text to that 988. You can even text the 988 number, which I think is amazing and wonderful. Nice. It really is.
That is
so
great.
Yes. Yep. You guys can all text that 988 number. So we'll jump into my story. So hi guys, I am Donna Wolff, and I am a suicide survivor. And sometimes when I say that, people kind of freak out like, oh my gosh, she tried to kill herself and she's still alive. Suicide survivor can have two different meanings. It can mean someone that has attempted suicide and lived. I am on the other side of it. I lost my son Zebulun to suicide March 1st of 2009. He was 18 years old, and he was a senior at Lutheran High Northeast here in Norfolk, Nebraska. So again, my son truly struggled with his mental health his entire life. So even as a little kiddo, I'll never forget the first day of kindergarten. His anxiety was just through the roof. He did not like change. He wanted everything to be status quo and to the norm. And if anything was different in his world, it would cause him major anxiety. So every first day of school, every year, even though we went to a really small parochial school, he would just get so anxious. And he would just have to make himself throw up, and it would make him feel better before he'd walk into the school. And I was, I am still a cosmetologist of 39 years. And at the time, I was able to be room mother. So I was on field trips and birthdays and making tons of cookies and cupcakes my whole mother career with him in school. And I was there all the time, but he just would freak out over any new thing. So my son,
sorry, what did that look like in him?
he would, if anybody knows what anxiety feels like, the heart can start racing, the palms of your hands can get really sweaty. It really feels like the walls are closing in on you. You can start to hyperventilate. Your breath starts getting, you just can't quite catch your breath. And you have a panic attack. You can freak out. Like, I don't feel good. I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to be here. Like, I just want to run. I want to get away.
And that's how he would present.
Yes. Yeah. He just would. Well, I don't know. I don't know anything about this. So that uncertainty was just, his mind was racing 100 miles a minute. And just to get him calmed down, it's like, I'm right here. It's okay. If you ever, and that, come on, you guys, that was back before cell phones, and cell phones were just getting started. And I always said, the teachers can always get a hold of mom. It's okay. But every first day of school, we would go through this every single year with him. So as he grew older, the depression and anxiety got worse. And his whole journey really did start. I lost my mother back April of 2008. That was the very first grandparent that he'd ever lost. And I feel like we don't teach our kids really well how to cope with grief. I think a lot of adults don't deal with grief very well either. So, you work, hey, take 3 days off, get your butt back to work. It's like, oh, okay. No, sometimes when you lose your person, it takes a lot longer. And I really had to learn that everybody grieves differently and in their own way and in their own time. So when my son went to his grandmother's funeral, that was his very first grandparent that died, and he just was not doing well. He goes, Mom, this really sucks. And I go, yeah, I know. I go, but it's okay. We're part Native American, and we definitely believe that she's with Creator. It's all good. We're going to see her again. He goes, no, you don't get it. He goes, I'm never watching another grandparent die. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And he would never answer me. And then that was April of 2008 that I lost my mother. And May of 2008 is when I caught him in his very first attempt. My son truly struggled. He had 4 attempts before his final death. He used many different methods. And I did have him at a counselor. I had him on medication. And this kid he was a mini me. He was very popular, good looking Native kid. He was captain of the football team. He did basketball and track, and he was in speech and band and drama, and very, very popular. But again, he was Robin Williams. He showed that laughter, jokester face to the world, but on the inside, he was just really struggling and hurting. He did not want to show anybody what was truly going on with him. So he would lie out his face to those counselors. Yeah, dude, safety plan. I got it. Yeah, take my meds. So I would watch him take his medication every morning, and I would check his mouth to make sure that he swallowed, that it wasn't hiding in the back of it, under his tongue or the back of his mouth. And we lived on a farm at the time, and he would make himself throw up. He'd go outside and throw up because he hated the way that medication made him feel. Now, as a mom and a hairdresser, I had to learn a huge big word, neurotransmitters. I call these things spark plugs in our brain. His spark plugs were not connecting correctly. And that medication made him level out where he was really understanding how severe his mental health was. And he did not like how it made him feel. So he wanted that medication out of his system. So again, he really, the last 2 weeks of his life, he was diagnosed manic depressive and borderline schizophrenic. So I had to really learn, well, what is this? What is this thing, that killed my kid? I don't understand mental health. Again, I'm a hairdresser. It's like, okay, I know how to do hair, but I guess I don't really understand what these big words are. And schizophrenia truly is when you're hearing voices or seeing images that are not real. And I'll never forget the week before he died, he goes, Mom, he goes, God, he goes, make him shut up. I go, sure, I'll tell anybody to shut up. I go, who do you want me to tell to shut up? He goes, this, he's always on the left side of his head. He goes, these voices, they're telling me they won't shut up. I go, what are they telling you? He goes, they're telling me to do really bad things. And I'd always say, please, God, just don't ever hurt anybody else. And so there again, my son was not willing to do his wellness journey, and he was not willing to help himself. And I always talk that when I talk to other people that are currently struggling. It's like, I know you guys don't want to do this. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. If you yourself have never been depressed, if you don't know what that deep, dark hole of depression looks like, please do not judge another human being for that. It is so difficult of a journey to walk. And that medication sometimes can make you feel like a zombie and you don't feel like yourself. But there's a reason why when you have a heart murmur or you need to take high blood pressure medicine or cholesterol medicine, it's the same with antidepressants. We need to stop the stigma and the taboo of medication and antidepressants. It's okay if somebody needs to take it. And I always say in Native country that we have a lot of relatives that are diabetic. But I tell you what, if you don't take your insulin, if you don't eat right and exercise, you can lose your fingers, your toes, you can go blind, and you can die from diabetes. So again, if you don't walk your wellness journey as you should, take responsibility for it, you could die from diabetes. It's the same with mental health. It's very manageable. Suicide is very, very preventable, and it's very manageable, but they have to walk that journey. Yes, Miss Angie.
Sorry, I'm trying to not interrupt, so I'm like raising my hand.
You're fine.
For those who are listening along. No, I love that you had said that about antidepressants, and I just want to emphasize how equally important it is to not judge those folks who are on antipsychotics or who do hear voices. And one of the stories that I love about my mom, because she has schizoaffective disorder, is we were sitting on a bench and we both saw, we were on a bench at a, oh my God, like a group home. She was in a group home at the time. And we both saw one of the guys who was staying there, one of the mentally ill guys walking by, and he was laughing at himself, just having a riot, talking to himself. And my mom leaned over and said, I wish my voices told me jokes like that guy's voices. And it was one of those moments that it gave me a newfound compassion for her, because that's not a reality in my world. I don't wish my voices told me jokes, because I don't have the voices other than, my own mean bully voice sometimes. Right. But, it was something that it was like, whoa, what do your voices say? And she's like, well, mine are just really mean and say really mean things. And it just hurt my heart for her. And it gave me a newfound compassion for folks who do have that. So as you were talking about your son, it just made me realize that same thing of, those voices of not wanting them to, I don't want to do these bad things. Like, get out of my head. Like, I can only imagine how stressful that would be, especially in somebody who has a lot of anxiety already. Like, oh my goodness.
And the majority of the time, like I said, I've gotten a lot of education and training on the topic of mental health and suicide since losing my son. And I am a trainer in mental health first aid, adult version. And there's an exercise that we do in that where you have one person talking in this ear, normal. And then in this ear, you've got somebody saying ugly, horrible, nasty things in your other ear at the very same time.
Yes.
And then you are trying to focus on hearing what this person is telling you, but at the same time, you have all this negativity talking to you at the very same time. And I love that exercise that we do in mental health first aid because it really hits home on the reality of what is that experience truly like. Again, like I said, if you've never been in that deep, dark hole of depression, God bless you that you've never been there. But as a society, we need to have a lot more kindness, compassion, and not sympathy, but empathy for people that are currently struggling. Because being empathetic means you're trying to put yourself in their shoes and you're not feeling sorry for them. Because, like I said, this is a topic that we really need to bring to the forefront and let people know, stop the finger pointing and the blaming and the ugliness surrounding all of these topics. These are very real. We're in 2023. We're able to talk about LGBTQ. We're in June, which is Pride Month. We can talk about transgender. I love that our society and that our young people are easily and openly talking about these things. So that's why mental health wraps around everything. The Pride Month, the domestic violence, the alcoholism, the drug addiction, all of these nasty, horrible things that can affect us as human beings, suicide is right in there. Because when you get down and out and so depressed about any topic in your life, it can lead to thoughts of suicide. It really can. So again, I talk about my son all the time because I feel like it's so important to give people permission to really come right out and say, as in Alcoholics Anonymous, hey, I'm Donna and I'm an alcoholic. You need to admit that and freely say it. Anybody who's currently struggling needs to say, hey, I'm Donna and I am having thoughts of suicide today. Same thing. We need to normalize this conversation and we need to let people know it's okay to say so. But if you yourself have never had thoughts of suicide, it's really scary to come right out and say that you are having thoughts because, again, what's going to happen to me? Are they going to call the cops on me? Or am I going to be arrested? Are they going to put me handcuffs on me? Are they going to throw a straitjacket on me? Am I going to be thrown in a padded 4-wall place and nobody's ever going to see me again? Am I going to be drugged out of my mind like a zombie? Like, am I going to lose my job? Is my partner going to leave me? Are my kids going to judge me? Like, is it going to be all over Facebook? Oh my God, they started walking Donna out of work today. Holy cats. Here we go. And again, the whole ugliness surrounding it and the gossiping and the whispering. And like I said, when my son died, I did find him in my home. And I always tell people, my heart goes out to each and every one of you if you have lost a loved one to suicide, and especially if you found your loved one. That's so traumatic. It's so traumatic. And please know, you are not able to get through that death alone. That is a different kind of animal. That's a different kind of death to grieve. Because if I would have lost my son to a car accident, I would have been treated much differently. But because it was suicide, and I was very open that it was suicide, that finger pointing and blaming and whispering, and that kid was crazy. You know, I think it's because of this. No, I think it's because of that. And the whole society and community just gets so weird about it. Because again, I'm small town Nebraska. And when somebody dies, People just normally bring casseroles to your house. They bombard you with these casseroles. Suicide is not a casserole death. People are not coming to the house, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, because everybody's freaking out and they're so scared that they're going to catch it. Like, oh my gosh, we can't talk about it. It's like, no, I tell people all the time, if you know of a family that has lost a loved one to suicide, why are you treating it any differently than any other death? They lost their loved one. Now, the component of suicide is there, but stop that ugliness surrounding it.
I love that, Donna. I love that so much, because you're 100% right. Like I can see people treating it differently, or being fearful of not wanting to name it because what it is, but it is the reality, and them not naming it only isolates you further.
Yeah, I'm already got trauma, so
Right.
Thanks for adding more.
Oh, right. So did anybody bring you a fucking casserole?
2.
You should have gotten like 50. You live in small town Nebraska.
I'll send you one.
Yeah.
We go out near Norfolk all the time.
but I hate to say that, but after losing my son, I got in a bad depression myself, because I did get blamed for my son's death. It's just ugly. And I got very depressed myself, and I said, you know what, I can't do this. I go, but here's the interesting thing. I didn't tell anybody that I went and got help, and I went and found a counselor out of town. I didn't check out any counselors in Norfolk, because again, oh my gosh, somebody might be seeing her walking into that mental health agency. We can't be having that. Look, see, that family is crazy. They're nuts. So after I started counseling and did get on some medication for a short time, and thank goodness for EMDR treatment, eye movement desensitization revitalization. It's the most bizarre thing, but it works. It's the tapping and these lights that go back and forth. And how my counselor described it, it's anybody that's experienced trauma, whether it's finding a loved one to suicide, a really bad car accident, if there's been homicide, even falling down a flight of icy stairs, that can be really traumatic for somebody. Any type of trauma that you've had that you're really having complicated grief over, highly recommend EMDR, because again, I am not a big pill popper myself. I don't like taking medications. I would much rather do more holistic type of healing, meditation and yoga and EMDR, all kinds of other things. I'm Native American, so we smudge and we do sweats, and our culture can be very preventative, and it can be very healing after a suicide death also. So I always tell people, I did start a survivors of suicide support group here in Norfolk after I lost my son, and we have a little tool that we use in group all the time. It's a little postcard that says, well, you're an idiot and here's why. So we use that as a tool just to write down, because sometimes people say the most horrific things after a death by suicide. Well, at least you still have one other child, and at least they're not having those horrible thoughts anymore. And it's like, no, I'd sell everything in the world if I could have my kid back. It's like people do say the most horrible things. And I'll never forget at my son's visitation line, there were 2 little old ladies, I swear on the Bible. They're coming through the visitation line. I've never met these ladies before in my life. I'm not very tall. I'm 5'5", and they're hitting me right about here. They go, oh, honey, we're so sorry for the loss of your son, but you do know he's in hell. And I'm like, whoa. I pulled my hand back, and my son-in-law grabbed me. He goes, yeah, let's go get some water. I go, yeah, because I was going to pop that lady right there. And it's like, wow. Now, you guys only came for the food after the funeral. I know you did. But that judgment that people that die by suicide are going to hell. And I love that the new Pope, now I'm not Catholic, but I do love him. He has acknowledged that mental health is a brain disorder. So again, we don't chastise people. My mom had stage 4 lung cancer. She died of stage 4 lung cancer at the age of 69. Now, she smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. That didn't help anything. But we don't chastise and say, well, grandma's going to hell. She had cancer. You know, we don't say that. But for some reason, we want to chastise people. Your brain is an organ of the body, just like your heart, your liver, and your lungs. When these organs malfunction, we don't stigmatize. For some reason, when our brain's not working correctly, there's so much ugliness and stigmatizing that goes on with that. And again, we need to stop that. We need to normalize mental health as physical health.
Amen. Can you talk more? Because one of the things you talked about when you came to my school was the traumatic brain injury and the impact that had on Zeb's mental health. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that, because I thought that was so powerful.
Yeah. So if we've never researched concussions before, or I did not, I had to really understand what a traumatic brain injury was. So Zeb was captain of the football team his senior year. So his junior year playing football, he had a concussion, kind of a mild one. We just watched it. But his senior year, the second game of the football season, he got his clock cleaned and he laid on that field for 5 minutes. Now, you don't think 5 minutes is a very long time, but here's this mom standing on the fence, ready to jump over, and all of his classmates are like going, no, Miss Wolff, don't do it. He's going to hate you who run on that field. I said, I don't care, man. My kid's not moving. He had a severe concussion. And I can honestly tell everybody that after that second concussion, Zeb's personality really changed. He went from a fun-loving Robin Williams to the most pissed off kid you're ever going to see. From the moment he would wake up till the moment he went to bed, he was just angry at the world. And I had to really research concussions. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Concussion with Will Smith, I highly recommend it, because that is the true life story of the brain surgeon who worked with all the NFL players that homicided and suicided.
Mm-hmm.
So it's proven, scientifically proven, that when you hit your head with a traumatic brain injury, whether you fall forward, whether you fall back and hit the back of your head, whether you hit the left side or the right side of your head. So our brain is this little egg inside of our skull, and it's floating around inside there, and it's the brain stem, and here's your skull, and it's just kind of floating around there. Now, when you hit your head that hard, your poor little egg gets scrambled and your whole personality can change. So like I said, research that movie. It's scientifically proven that traumatic brain injuries can lead to depression and suicidal thoughts and suiciding of people. Now, I really want to talk on this point also. The old verbiage of committed suicide, we need to stop that language. Committed suicide has a very negative criminal connotation to it. My son did not commit a crime. He did not commit a sin. Again, his brain wasn't working correctly, and that's all it was. Yeah. So we need to say that they died by suicide, that they killed themselves, which is very harsh. But in Native country, we always say that Creator gives us life, and my son gave his life away. Because in the Native world, there is no, in any of all the tribal languages, there is no word for suicide. That was not part of our culture. That was brought to us through colonization. So I always say that my son gave his life away, or that he suicided. Again, my mom, his grandma died of cancer. My son died of the disease of depression.
It's interesting how different our society, like you've already touched on this a bunch of times, but how different our society sees both of those, because, in one, your mom dies of cancer. Yes, can we be like, I should have done more, I shouldn't have said this or said that or whatever, of course, but we never feel responsible as individuals for the cancer. Yet suicide is one of those that somehow all of that blame goes on to somebody. And that is something that was so powerful in your story, was that all of that blame was put on you. Not only had you put that, heavy weight on you, because that's what we do as moms. We feel responsible for our kids. What could I have done? What couldn't I have done? Even had he died of cancer, you still would have had those thoughts. But then it's like your family and society and everybody puts that blame on you. And it's the only death that we seem to do that with. And it's
victim blaming.
It
Because
is.
in my family, people say it's selfish and they blame the victim. Like they blame anyone who is suicidal or who dies by suicide. They're selfish. They're not thinking of others. And I'm always like, could you imagine being so severely depressed, so intensely depressed that your only resolution to that is dying? Like, clearly, that's what I always try to share with people is, or people who say that they're just being selfish. I'm like, they're not being selfish. They're in a dark place. And if you can't even comprehend that dark place, then that tells me you've never been to that place before. So it's so sad that they're in that place and that they feel like they can't reach out or talk to anybody.
Yeah.
So another big word.
But then
No,
you
go ahead.
have to pick up the pieces.
So yeah, another big word that this mom had to learn was psychache, that unbearable pain. So again, it's unbearable pain. So I always liken it to people with fibromyalgia or just cancer patients or any type of unbearable physical pain, migraines, anything like that. We all have had physical pain. We know what that feels like. Now, imagine you have unbearable pain inside your brain that it's nonstop and there is no release from it. There's no relief. There's no release. And you do feel like nobody's going to understand you. If I try to explain this to somebody, suck it up, buttercup. Tomorrow's a better day. What the hell's wrong with you? You'll find another person. It's no big deal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's like, no, we need to validate people's feelings. We need to validate where they're at. And again, you're not babying people. You're truly listening to them.
And you're sitting the
judging them
with them.
Yes.
And that's something like I can only imagine. One of the things when I tried to talk about my mom's mental health as a kid, I had to hold space for the people I was talking about her mental health to. I needed them to hold space for me. I can only guess that you've had to do the same thing whenever you talk about your son, and even the simple question of how many kids do you have? What do you say? Do you say, I have 2? Well, how old are they? Well, or do you say, I have 1, but I lost 1. Oh, how did he die? Oh, okay. And then it's like you say, well, he took his life. Oh shit. Now they're uncomfortable and you have to hold that space. And it's like, fucking A, like, why can't we just talk about this loss without it being so awkward and uncomfortable for everybody?
Because again, and I always say, no, I had 3 children. I had a miscarriage, I had my daughter, then I had my son. So I always mention miscarriages and I always talk about these poor moms that have had stillborns, miscarriages, SIDS. So again, after I lost my son in Norfolk, there was no support group. I mean, I was going to Grief Share. Or I went to Compassionate Friends, which is a support group for anybody that's lost a child for any reason. So everybody's going around the room. Yeah, I lost my son to SIDS or miscarriage or a drowning, a car accident. And it comes to me and I say suicide. And I'll never forget that one lady. She goes, well, why are you here? You don't belong here. She goes, your son did that on purpose. And I was like, again, wow, thanks, lady. Thanks for adding more trauma onto my trauma. And that is when I'm just that type of person that's like, you know what? This did not happen for no reason at all. There's a reason and a purpose that everything happens. So it's like, all right, fine, hold my beer and watch. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to get educated on this thing. So I started my nonprofit here in Norfolk, the Northeast Nebraska Suicide Prevention Coalition. I got the funding. So we started the nonprofit. I started the support group in Norfolk. We have one in Columbus now. And I'm just so adamant that the educational piece needs to be there with people. What is this thing? We need to talk about it because prevention, we all know prevention, intervention, how do you truly talk to somebody that's on a ledge, ready to jump, get them down and the resources that they need? And then postvention. Postvention is after a death by suicide. What's a better way to heal from it, which automatically turns right back into prevention? So it's a three-spoke prong, and it just goes round and round. So yeah, I'm just adamant that I love talking about this. I love talking about my son because, again, I'm pretty much known as the suicide lady up here. Everybody knows that I talk so open and honestly about it, and I do normalize it. So it's like, yeah, no big deal. Let's talk about it. And I know some people are really shocked, like, man, she just needs to like shut her mouth. It's like, no, not going to happen.
I love that you talk
I
about
love that you're doing that in a small town community because my husband is from Stanton, Nebraska, so your neighbor. And just knowing small town community, feelings are not widely talked about out there. And it is like, suck it up, buttercup, grin and bear it. And, we keep things polite and kosher, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's fantastic that you're starting from rural and moving outward to just clean shit up because what we were talking about earlier is just having the capacity of holding space, right? Mm-hmm. Just being able to be empathetic and for 4 seconds, pretend to understand what the other person is going through. Don't feel sorry for them and don't necessarily try to fix it, but just sit in the space with them. So...
And I tell my support group people all the time, I said, it's not fair that we're the ones that have to educate other people, but that is how it goes. So I said, us that are left behind, it really is our job that when someone does say committed suicide, it is up to us to say, wait a second, there's a better way to say this. There's a more healing way to say this, because every time committed suicide is brought up in any news article, any media, it does need to be corrected, because for people left behind, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Mm-hmm. So again, if we can be mindful of our words, it's amazing the healing action that can take place. Thank you for bringing up Stanton, Nebraska, because again, they had that suicide last year. And I'm telling you, I get notified all the time that there was a death in this school. You need to come do a program. It's like, well, after the death is not really the best time to do that. Before the death takes place is when these schools need to be saying, yeah, I'll open my door, come on in. And
let's talk about it.
Yeah, and another really horrible old thinking is that if you talk about it, I'm going to put that idea in that kid's head, and that's so wrong.
So I think that was like the key thing in so many people I talk to is you need to always ask, are you feeling suicidal? And I know multiple people not in the mental health world are always shocked. They're like, you just straight up ask that? And I go, yeah. And then you ask if they have a plan and if they can easily accomplish said plan. And like, you go into detail. And their response is typically that. They're like, wouldn't you just be giving them ideas? And I'm like, no. If they're thinking it, they're thinking it.
Right. Same with sex. Let's just go ahead and throw that out there. If anybody needs a comparison. The idea of sex as a teenager, if we talk about sex, we've implanted it in their mind. Fuck off. These kids have been thinking about sex since they fucking grew hormones. Like from the moment, like My kids,
They're gonna figure it out. So you
My kids
either
are-
tell them.
yeah, my kids are in elementary and they gyrate because it feels nice, you know, whatever. Like, it's just, it is what it is. We're not putting any idea in anybody's head. We might be
And
giving them a little bit more of guidance on the healthy way to do it, but
And especially with teens, I always explain that frontal lobe of the brain is not fully developed till the age of 25. And well, I think now they say 27, because again, our kids just are not maturing at a rate that they should.
They're just
But
dumb.
their minds, their
when that-
bodies are.
yeah, when that frontal lobe is not fully developed, that cognitive thinking of, if I do this, this is going to happen. If I do this, this is going to happen. It's not there. So when you ask a kid, why didn't you clean your room? They're like, well, I don't know. It's like, sometimes they don't know. It's like, it doesn't click with them.
Right.
It doesn't click. And a lot of times the person with depression, that thought of suicide is sitting in the back of their head. It's sitting there, it's sitting there, it's sitting there. And then anything can happen, and boom, it's right here ready to go. So like you said, I always say it's 3 questions. Are you suicidal? Do you have a plan? Do you have the means? So again, not asking them, are you wanting to hurt yourself? Because that's something totally different than suicide. People need to be brave enough to calmly and very straightforward ask those questions. And don't beat around the bush about it. Just come straight out.
No, that's like saying, oh yeah, grandpa's not coming around anymore because he's in a better place. He
No.
passed away. Just say he died. Like, why do we try to come up with these, words that muddy the waters? It's
because we haven't, our society has done a horrible job on teaching people how to grieve and how to grieve properly. And
Yes.
another point, I love that you brought this up. Do not lie to children about a suicide death. Do not say that it was an accident. Do not say, again, that they're just asleep or whatever. They're going to be afraid to go to sleep. You need to come right out and say age appropriately that they took their life. The older that they can get, you can get more specific. But again, we don't ask people details on how they got raped. Hopefully you don't. Same thing with suicide death. It is not important the means on how they took their life. What's important is that they were struggling and they did not reach out for the help that was out there. That is the message we always need to make loud and clear. It does not matter how they killed themselves. What matters is that they were hurting and struggling and did not call or text or talk to anyone.
and that their brain was sick.
And that, yes, there was a chemical imbalance in the brain, and that we need to normalize it. Because a lot of these kids want to know details about my son. And I said, you don't need to know. That's not important. As again, when someone gets raped, you don't ask the details of that. Hopefully you don't, because that's not important either. What's important is they were a victim, and that's all.
Mm-hmm.
I love that so much. It's so funny because one of the stories that I've shared since I've met you, and I feel like I've known you forever, but it's literally been like 2 months, is because I always see the blessing of my mom's life in my life. And it took me years to realize that blessing and how she gave her life for my soul to advance in the ways that it needed to. And the first time I met Donna, she had started talking about her son. And I said, wow, like what a gift your son gave you. And then I almost like gasped and like swallowed my own tongue because I was like, oh my God, did I just say that out loud? Like, I didn't know anything about Donna. I didn't know how, like, that sounds really fucked up if you don't understand the message. Because in no way was I saying that his life wasn't worth living. Like, I wasn't meaning it in any negative way. It was more like this was a part of his story, and this is a part of your story, Donna, and the gift and the blessing of what you are sharing within, you know, to debunk suicide and to create space for people who are left after somebody has taken their life is incredible. And that ultimately is and your soul knew what I was trying to say. I'm grateful for that, because otherwise that could have gone a real bad way.
But see, and I tell a lot of people that just because this has been my journey does not mean that every suicide survivor will walk the same journey. Again, this has been a true calling to me. Creator definitely spoke to me and said, yeah, little girl, I did not gift you with a huge big voice, and you're not shy, and you are a straight shooter, and you know how to talk to people. So here, this happened to you. This was not God's fault, because I know a lot of people afterwards are so angry at God. Like, you weren't there and you didn't save my person and all this and that. And it's like, no, horrible things can happen in life, but it's up to us on whether we're going to keep our faith and turn towards him or away from him. And there again, it's each person's decision on what they do with it. Now, this was my calling. I made the choice to not let it destroy me. I made the choice to get the education. I made the choice to do all kinds of trainings and educational pieces with it. Some people get stuck in their grief and they do sit and ask that question, why? Why me? What did I do that I'm being punished? Why my person? What did I say? What didn't I say? What did I do? What didn't I do? Why couldn't I have stopped this? And you have to go through that process in your grief. You have to, because if you can't go over it, you can't go under it, can't go around it. You have to walk right through it. And if you do not, you will get stuck. That's why I love counselors. I love Miss Angie and all the stuff that she does, because again, I feel like all of us reach a certain point in life. Are you kidding me? We've had crap dealt to us, and you need to talk about it. You can't just sit there and ignore it and act like it didn't happen. And I always tell young kids too, it's like, if you have that psych gate going on, do not numb it with numbers of alcohol and drugs. It's always going to be there. You cannot run away from this, you guys. You have to talk about it.
It was interesting when you came and talked to my school. I mean, I've worked there for 7 years, and there were, how many people would you say were in that room? 30?
30.
Okay. So out of that 30, there were probably 8 staff and 22 students. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you at least 4 of the staff had expressed to me afterwards about having lost somebody that they cared about by suicide. Mm-hmm. Guess how many of those staff had ever talked to me before about that?
Never.
Zero. And in fact, I don't know if I had told you, Donna, but one of the staff, it was actually the anniversary of her friend having taken his life. She didn't realize it had brought up all those feelings. And then later she saw on Facebook, it was the anniversary, and she was like, holy shit. Like it was so, again, synchronistic. And it just, I have goosebumps right now, because to me, that's all of that is just showing that you are doing what you were meant to do. You came to earth with a purpose, and it hurts my heart to know that you had to lose a child, because I cannot imagine that kind of pain. I can't imagine the journey that you had to go through, and it sounds so heavy, and yet here you are, so light and just beautiful and not holding anything back. And I just fucking love that about you. I do want to ask, okay, I don't remember, and I remember we briefly talked about it. Your son's name, I remember you found it. Can you tell me the story about how you named him?
Yeah.
What it means
so
again? My
son's name is Zebulun. It's biblical, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. I called him Zebi. And my my grandmother-in-law. So this Wolff family is a huge family, and she was on my case the whole time I was pregnant with him. My daughter's name is Rachel, which is biblical also. She was adamant. She goes, now you can't duplicate any name in this family. You know, she goes, that's just not, I'm like, whatever, lady. She was just irritating me to no end. I grabbed that Bible, I flipped that thing open, and I pointed my finger, and jokingly, I said, well, if it's Beelzebub, it's going to be Beelzebub. And I was just like, seriously, lady, this is what his name's going to be. And it landed on Zebulun. So it's like, okay. But yeah, that's how he got his name, because I was like, oh my gosh, don't tell me that I can't duplicate a name because this family is so big. I'm like, whatever, fine, here we go.
What does it mean again?
Zebulun is just one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Yeah.
I love
so
that.
his name is Zebulun, because it can be Zebulon. That's Zebulon, but it was Zebulun, and I called him Zebi. So
I
yeah,
love that. I think
I love that.
that's so cute.
yeah.
And he was adorable. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast via Spotify or Apple, I encourage you to go to our YouTube, because I will have some photos of him on there, or go to our Facebook, because Jamie will post some photos of him, because he was, you can just tell he was a beautiful soul that offered so much. And truly, his life has impacted so many ways moving forward. And I think that that's something that we often miss in losses like this, it was his life that spurred yours to do what it's doing, which has impacted 1,000 million, so many lives. And that ripple effect of that's the gift that is within, that's the medicine within the pain.
Well, and the reason why I share my son's picture all the time also is I want people to see the face of depression and the face of suicide. Everybody thinks it's this gothic looking, just weird looking kid over there. No, it can be your cheerleaders. It can be your student athletes. It can be anybody, 8 to 80, male, female, anybody. I don't care how you identify. It can touch anybody anywhere, because it's about the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can be affected by this.
Yeah. He
Anywhere.
was the captain of the football team.
Yes.
Yeah. I always say my uncle Rex, who ended up having schizophrenia and being nomadic. I mean, his senior year, he was prom king. He was known as Sexy Rexy. He was wrestling champ, all the things. And now he can get you Tom Selleck sperm if you want it. So
do you guys have any other questions?
Jamie, do you have any other?
More so just like your generic send-offs, Donna. Are there any other things that, if you could leave listeners who are more than likely the ones who don't know how to approach somebody if they're feeling suicidal, and or someone like you who is a suicide survivor, what would be some things, just the key takeaways that our listeners can now use and implement immediately?
So there is a really short YouTube video, which maybe you guys can put on your page also.
Yeah, we'll link it.
It's called The Awkward Conversation by the Ad Council. It's like 2 minutes or 3 minutes long. How do we have these awkward conversations in life? Seriously, like when a boy wants to ask a girl to prom, when seriously, you got to have an awkward conversation about, you were talking sex. How do I put a condom on? All these really awkward conversations sometimes, and it's a great video leading into how do you ask that question. All you got to do is start and say, hey, dude, are you okay? No, really, are you okay? How are you today? No, seriously, talk to me. How are you doing? I've noticed that you've been acting a little differently. I've been noticing you giving away some stuff. I've been hearing you say certain things. Talk to me. Are you really okay? That's how you approach somebody with that suicide question. I've been seeing this, I've been hearing this, I've been noticing this. People sometimes that are doing these things and saying these things, sometimes they're thinking of suicide. Are you thinking of suicide?
Because your son gave away a lot of his things before.
Oh my gosh, he was giving away Michael Jordan high tops. He gave away a bass guitar, his laptop, and I'm thinking, oh, what a good Christian kid. He's just helping somebody else. Well, no, he had a plan. He was getting ready. He's getting ready to go. So that's a great video to watch. Have that conversation open and honestly with somebody. I've been noticing this. I've been hearing this. Are you okay? Are you okay? Really? Sometimes people that are doing this are suicidal. Are you suicidal? Really easily, calmly, not freaking out over it. So then on the flip side of it, if you do know of somebody that's lost someone to suicide, reach out to them. Again, that conversation. Hey, how are you doing? You know what? I'm going to watch your other kids for a while. You go for a walk, take a nap, whatever. Again, do not treat suicide death as different than any other death. Take the casseroles, people. Get
really it
over there. And I'm also going to say, forget the casseroles, bring them a roll of stamps. The stamps are so helpful when you're sending out thank you notes, or bring more Kleenex. Bring toilet paper to the house. Are you kidding me? If people stop by, you always need extra toilet paper, especially after the pandemic. Forget the casseroles. There's lots of bottled water would be great to take to a family also. It's like, just normal everyday stuff. Do you want me to do a load of laundry for you? Can I clean your house for you? Just simple. Can I run and get groceries for you? What simple stuff can I do for you? Do not treat a suicide death differently than any other death. Don't focus that it was a suicide death. Just focus and say the person's name. Again, say their name. Share a story. I always asked his friends, like, tell me something that naughty that he did and make me laugh. That's something that I don't know. And I love that these kids were sharing stories, because we do that at funerals, don't we? We share great stories about the people that are gone. But for some reason, at a suicide death, people are afraid to share those stories. I'm like, no, tell me something naughty he did. I'd love to hear that, because that would be exactly him. So exactly, do not treat it any differently. Check up on people. When it's 3 months after a death, check in on them. How you doing? You want to go out for lunch? You want to go for a drink? Hey,
or walk.
Because 80% of people left behind after a death by suicide can be very suicidal themselves. And especially parents who have lost a child to suicide, it's extremely hard on their marriage. So because everybody grieves differently in their own way and in their own time, I always tell people left behind, don't ever let anybody tell you, well, you should have that room cleaned out by now. You should have that headstone. Well, you should be doing this. I said, tell them to shove their shoulds.
Shove their shoulds.
Shove that should, man, because no, everybody does it in their own time. If you haven't done something yet, don't feel bad about it. And do not ever let anybody else tell you how to grieve, ever. Shove your should.
I fucking love that. Shove your should. Because you're 100% right. We're so quick to judge other people's journey. And it's like, unless you've walked in those shoes, don't you dare fucking tell somebody what they should or should not do.
That's
and you
right.
can hold space for them. You can offer advice to them, but that's about it. Like that's it. Even as somebody who is a little harsh with folks that is like, listen, Linda, you got to work on this shit. I'm saying it in a loving, meaningful way, but ultimately they still can do whatever the fuck they want, and they know this.
Exactly.
So, Donna, I love you so much. Now, yesterday, forever, always. Did you bring a mug, Jamie?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to show your mug first, or do you want me to go first?
I can do mine. I don't know if we did already, whatever. It says, I didn't even read it.
Together.
Unstoppable together. Can't stop, won't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop.
I think this represents Donna. She's unstoppable as shit. That's what she's taking and honoring Zeb's life and continuing it by sharing his story repeatedly and loudly and making it so others can heal and be the healer that she needed in that same exact time. Oh. So look at you. Just can't stop. Get it, girl.
Won't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop.
So it's really funny because I was torn between the one I chose, which is Keep It Spicy, and another mug that said You're My Person, but You're My Person was smaller and I wanted a larger drink. So I went with Keep It Spicy. But it's interesting because you said your person several times. I'm going to say Keep It Spicy connects in the sense that we need to keep our conversation spicy. Spicy is something that people love. It offers a little bit of discomfort, but we love it. We love that kick that I'm alive. I'm experiencing this. Even when we're crying, we're like, this is so good. And that's how our conversations need to be. That's how we need to show up for other people. We need to keep it spicy. We need to not be afraid of the things that might cause a few tears to drain from our eyes, or might cause our nose to run, or might cause our tongue to swell up and hurt, whatever it is. We need to keep the conversation spicy. And that's what you're doing, Donna. And I love that so much.
And that good, ugly cry, the snot's coming down.
It's so like, good.
Yeah. Just like wiping it on your arm. Yeah. And I will end with saying in our culture, Native culture, you are worthy. So you are worthy. You are worthy. Each and every person on this podcast, you are worthy. Creator brought you all here for a reason. You all have a purpose, whether you realize that or not. And you are worthy. So I hope.
I love that so much, Donna. And I love you. And I love everybody who's shown up today to hold space for Donna's story. I hope that you take this message and it impacts you in a positive way and helps you impact others in a positive way and hold that space for them. We love you so much. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And honestly, if you could leave a review, if you are a person who listens on a daily, I encourage you to leave a review just to let other people know how awesome we are.
It helps other people find us. So if you like it, then other people will too. And
it helps other people find stories like Donna's that they very much need to hear. Jamie and I, we have our own opinions, right? But that we've had so many amazing guests, Donna included, and we want to get their stories out there. So if you can take 5 minutes, go sit on the toilet, lock your door if you're a mom, because the kids are going to try to come in there. Lock your door. It's okay. You're not having to do audio, so they can be, banging down the door, whatever. You just get your words out there and you just say, awesome, love them so much. It's fine. Just say whatever. All right. We love you so much. Thank you again for being here. Bye. If you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or a crisis, please call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Or contact the crisis text line by texting TALK, TALK, to 741-741. These services are both free and confidential. If you think we're cool,
or even if you don't,
please like or subscribe so you'll stay up to date on all things The Shrink Show.
Thank you for choosing to spend a portion of your life with us. And remember, don't take yourself too seriously. Life is all a giant shrink show.
A Huda Media Production.
Side effects of listening to this podcast may include side aches or snorting from laughter, impromptu jazz hands, nodding in agreement even though you might be listening alone, an occasional "you said it, girl," and mild cases of existential dread. This podcast is strictly for entertainment and informative purposes only and is not intended or implied to diagnose, treat, or otherwise substitute for professional mental health, medical, legal, or other advice. Thank you.